I'm a principal educator at DQMatters. It's a boutique business consultancy focused on data and information management. So I do the full spectrum of data governance, data quality, and but my specialty and what I'm known for is the conformed dimensions of data quality, which is basically a proposed standard for the set of the dimensions of data quality. And we'll get into that. It plays into the presentation, so I won't spend too much time. This is the information on how to connect with me right here on the bottom, and we'll just go through that as we. I mean, you'll have that available to you for later. I'll also LinkedIn. So I wanted to kind of like put this out there to see. I know my brother lives in Hillsborough, and so I get up there, and that was the kind of the offer to the chapter was, hey, maybe when I'm there physically, then we could do this in person. So I wanted to kind of tie in some of my outdoor. I know you guys in the Pacific Northwest have a much better balance of life with spending time outside in the outdoors, and I appreciate that. So I thought I'd put this together on like kind of who I am and where I come from, right? So DQMatters is my job. Right now we're just kicking off the DMBOK 3 editorial board, and so I'm really excited about that. Today was the first day that we had an intro, like all the members of the board getting together. So I'm really excited and involved in that. I also publish. It's not a yearly annual dimensions of data quality report. It's usually about every 3 years. Conduct the report just to have a survey fatigue, and so we published that in December of last year. The link is I can send out the link to that, and you guys can download that on your own time. Let me see. Can you see in the chat the link there, DIMS survey?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's where you can go to download the actual survey. And I mean, the report on that, it has way more information, and there's a recording of some of that information. So you can, like Gene had mentioned, following my newsletter for a number of years, I've had that out there, and every time it comes out with a big upswell in the downloads, and the webinar kind of walks through the results in much more detail than we're covering today. As I mentioned, I speak at different conferences, DGIQ, but some of my passions in the nonprofit area are, I'm a volunteer at my church, and this is one of the events that I built the backdrop and then participated there in the middle. I'm an avid gardener, snowboarder. I just got back from Sapporo and Hokkaido in Japan, doing some good powder snowboarding there. And on the side, I like to fish when I get a chance. So in the agenda, I thought, instead of giving you guys the detail, how about like a graphical agenda, so that the key topics we'll cover today, and the meat is really the kind of data quality using AI, but the state of data quality in the industry. I think it's important to kind of take a step back and look at where we're at in the industry and where we're going, and maybe even it should give you some hints of how you can benchmark to your own organizations. And then that was really kind of the auspices of the conformed dimensions of data quality. After I had come up with them, I had said, well, let's see how organizations are actually using these dimensions. So we'll talk about that just to level set. And then most of the time today is really around, my experience with using LLMs for data quality. And I'm a data management, data quality expert. I am not an AI expert, and I'm not an LLM expert. So there may be some of my observations that are, very lay centric, rather than an AI expert. And if you're an AI expert, then feel free to hit me up afterwards and tell me why certain things work the way they do, because I'm looking at this more from a data quality practitioner perspective rather than an AI expert. So the state of data quality in the industry, this is where you can get the download. and I know we're just sent over the URL, so probably we're good on this one. But I've been doing it since 2015. That's 6 times in total. 2025 will be our inaugural year, and so I really really help out if you guys would take the survey. I think we had 39-ish response this year, but the more that we can get, the better, in order to have a truly unbiased data set regarding industry usage of the dimensions of data quality. And probably the best way is on my website. There, just subscribe to the newsletter, and then you'll get the notification when that comes out for 2025. But this is the 10th year, so it'd be really just really incredible if everyone could take that. Really appreciate that. So what is that this year? I'm just going to give a few stats on the results of the survey, right? So one of the things is, ever since the beginning, this is a stacked bar chart on 2015 when we started the survey till this last year, on the interest of a standard and whether or not people would invest or make changes in their organization if there was some sort of standard. And the lack of a standard for data quality dimensions is still a challenge. I mean, you see those that are very interested and somewhat interested, those dark green colors, are still over 80% in this year. So even though various things have come along, and although I'm a strong proponent of DAMA, I think that the DAMA dimensions of data quality are abstract and not as atomic as the conform dimensions. And I hope to facilitate that improvement in the future. But I think there's kind of a, being on the publishing committee doesn't mean I get to ram through whatever I think, right? That's the best part about DAMA, is it's a peer review process. And so I look forward to seeing how we can increase the detail and the ability to create atomic measures through the DAMA dimensions of data quality, because I think some people would argue that DAMA is a broader standard. And when you, as you'll see in my ChatGPT results, ChatGPT and other organizations cite DAMA as the DAMA dimensions of data quality. But what could a standard provide to us, right, is shared understanding, that common language. Just out of curiosity, it's a little bit hard to raise hands here. How about within the group that we have online today, those people that are individual, like consultants or maybe contract workers that move between companies every year or so? Can you raise your hands? Just like do the hand raise thing or whatever. Okay, and then I'll come back. I need a little space in between to kind of distinguish between the hand raises because of the timeliness aspect of it here. But I'll ask now in the future, and in a few minutes I'll ask about the FTE roles and like more of a full-time employee sort of role. Right, so okay, we have a decent number of hands were raised there. So I think that the shared understanding is really important. Like, I'm a consultant, right? And I need to be able to run into an organization and compare numbers between what I've done in the past along the same dimensions, and I call it underlying concepts. And that really provide, and if you had a comprehensive approach like the CDDQ outlines, then it's a framework. Not a methodology. Methodology would mean you do it in sequence. And the framework is kind of like a giant Cheesecake Factory menu. When you go out with your family and nobody can agree on what kind of food to eat, you go to Cheesecake Factory because they have like a lot of stuff from different different genres, and so you can pick the food you want. Okay, so now we've been a few minutes on that. How about people that are FTE roles? As opposed to like contractor or consultant roles? Can you raise your hand? And so I think in the comprehensive approach, you have this framework of picking what dimensions apply to the situation, the issue that you're trying to resolve, and then streamlined implementation because it's out of the box and it's kind of something to start with. You don't have to start from zero, right? Okay, that's good. That was a nice balance between the contractor consulting view versus the FTE sort of streamlined implementation, improved decision making. And I think decision making is really down at the third level. We'll talk about the levels of the conform dimensions of data quality, but having actual metrics sort of out of the box, so to speak, that you can implement in your organization really drives out a lot of value when you have a standard. So in the 2024 results of the survey there, and this is why I encourage you guys to go there and download the paper. And if you don't have a lot of time, maybe just pop that the webinar on your phone while you're driving or something and just listen to it. But the levels of the use of the dimensions of data quality. So we asked people, what levels are you using the dimensions of data quality? 68% of the organization, so these are all the green pie pieces there, said they're using some sort of the dimensions of data quality, right? So various methods, 18%, one method, but it still isn't well defined and governed. So most people are there at 26%, and then one formally defined and well governed. So about a quarter of folks have something well defined and stood up. But then there's a pretty significant amount of people, and of course our survey is somewhat biased, right? Because people don't take the survey if they're not into data management, data quality. So companies that don't have anything are underrepresented, meaning this don't use dimensions is actually, should be much larger, because the people that are taking the survey already kind of know about data quality, data management, and they're more likely to therefore have something in place. So this is a little bit biased in that sense. Don't use the dimensions, 32%. So then what is within that 32%? We tried, but we couldn't agree on a standard 16%, right? So back in 2017, there was a respondent, to the survey that had said, the conform dimensions prevented fistfights over what's the correct definition of each dimension during implementation. And I think, whether or not that's a sort of a metaphorical fist fight or a physical fist fight, but I know some of our discussions can get pretty heated around the definitions of things. And one of the great things about the conform dimensions is I'm not arguing that conform dimensions are perfect. So your organization can take them out of the box and extend them in a much easier way, in an atomic way, because they're unpacked in a hierarchical format. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So one of the other great things about the survey, what it turned up was this, the question was, maybe let me just go back one here. Haven't needed it or hasn't occurred to us to use it. Like, so 16% of people, completely don't even know about it. And then the other question is, well, how do you give an evaluation of data quality if you aren't even using the dimensions of data quality? So in the survey, the interesting thing was that many people answered their level of data quality, even though they said they didn't use the dimensions of data quality. So in the stacked bar chart on the right here, it says don't use the dimensions of data quality, but then again, they're able to evaluate their data quality level from some sort of gut subjective estimate perspective. And just from that perspective, those people that say they use the dimensions of data quality, they have 15% less poor data quality. So, the goal would be to have fewer problems and more excellence. So you would hope that people that are using the dimension of data quality would have bigger bar, a bigger segment there for excellent. And we do see that. I mean, there's not very many people. This is actually one respondent in the whole result set for 2024 that makes up that 4% of quote unquote excellent. But one of the other on the other polar opposite end of that is those that have poor data quality within the people that measure data quality, they have less poor data quality. Now they means to have more fair data quality. So probably those organizations that aren't, maybe even your own organization, if you're not measuring it, then everything really washes out to more fair and even good. Yeah, but you don't know until you measure it. And the most important part is you're not managing it, because you're not measuring it in any significant way. So those who measure data quality really have a strong, they have the ability to move forward in a manageable way. As you see here on all the graphics where it's applicable, I put the sample size and 39, and we'd really love to increase that. So please participate in the survey next year. This is the chart that I flash a lot, just for the survey in general, to kind of give people kind of some background on where we're standing. I don't know the exact ins and outs of what happened in 2015. Every year we have a little bit of movement, but we had pretty low responses for accessibility. And then after that, shortly after that, we had kind of the big data movement and the hype cycle around Hadoop and some of the other things, where accessibility was really important. It was like, get all the data in the data lake, get access to it. And that, kind of came up after that. By 2024 now, we seem to have dipped back down. It's, again, one of the challenges of having small data is, any of these kind of minor fluctuations shows up in a way that seems a little extreme. For instance, timeliness, right? I think that was another component of the data lake, and big data is getting access to the data quicker. So these two kind of play in there. But if you have a specific, and you're welcome even now, I don't know if we're going to have enough time to put your thoughts into the messages online as well around why we may be seeing the numbers we are here. But I think the big takeaway for most people is really just the difference between 2015 and 2024. As an industry, we've grown significantly, especially on those dimensions that are easily measured through tools, right? Like completeness, consistency. And a lot of vendors use the word accuracy. You have to be careful there, because the true kind of data quality definition of accuracy is not typically something you can do with the tool out of the box. You need to kind of come at that from a couple perspectives. Validity, of course, is easy out of the box. Integrity, decently easy. So all of these dimensions, you see significant growth in them, as well as representation, which can be intangible and difficult for organizations to handle. So that one of the fun ones, I know everybody's always kind of interested in tools, and we didn't do a significant sort of vendor analysis or anything like that in the survey. That's not really in the scope. I'm trying to stay away from the sort of vendor argument, so to speak, between which tool is the best. But the question kind of stands out there: build versus buy in terms of your data quality tool, and some really interesting information has come out. So those people that have a tool, they purchased it, and it's currently in use, about 33%. Those that don't have a tool, about 43%. So I assume those ones are, kind of doing it in SQL, or, so their own in-house kind of programmed queries, or not even doing it in any formal way. Those that built the tool, right, that have a tool that they built in-house, and then just one respondent have a tool they build and bought. And I'm just going to high level. We don't have enough time to go into the details on this, but really, some of the reasons are the same for any other architectural evaluation you would do. But customization needs, cost considerations on, why you might want to build your own tool. On the other side, lack of development talent. Maybe you don't know all the dimensions that you want to measure. Maybe you don't have software development skills in-house. Maybe you have a single stack of technology, so you're just going to buy, whatever vendor it is you have for your ETL tool. And some of those make sense. Coming out of this, the big kind of thing in the call out there in the bottom right-hand side, organizations who build their own tools measured twice the number of dimensions. So this really kind of jumped out at me, was that for those that had purchased dimensions, when you count them up, so because I'm asking what dimensions they use, I can count those up, and then I can create an average for those people who purchased tools versus they built them. in-house, and the ones that built them in-house are measuring a lot more dimensions. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that this could be the case. One of them might be they're just much more mature in terms of data quality, so they know how to measure things, and they're doing that. But I think it also is a reflection of the ability to expand and have control of your destiny. And the people that are building their own tools typically, are measuring a lot more than out of the box. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying don't use an out of the box tool. That may be appropriate depending on where you're at in the life cycle of your data quality program. And I partner with vendors when I teach my classes. I partner with them to bring screenshots and maybe even a quickie demo into my classes in order to help people understand the role of the tool and how to compare that with different tools, right? So making the purchase of a tool is not an insignificant thing. It requires some careful evaluation of the needs within your organization and a strategic plan over time. So how about the industry set of the dimensions of data quality? And I think that the big question in people's mind and in my mind was the dimensions of data quality are easy. They're just whatever the word is, integrity, validity, why is there any confusion at all? So on paper, I just started kind of mapping this out as I was, so I did the IQCP, Information Quality Certified Professional, and it was by a nonprofit organization that existed previously called IQ International, Information Quality International, which was actually renamed from another prior organization, IAIDQ. Anyway, the credential was like the CDMP, but it would focus purely on information quality, and information quality definition had a broader umbrella, including many of the things that are included in the DAMA wheel. But in that sort of studied process, I just started, looking at what are the authors, what are the concepts underneath each of the dimensions that authors talk about for those, and then how would I align that? And the most common, definitions I kept in the black bubbles at the concept level. So you have a dimension level and a gray bar, and then I later call them underlying concepts, but they're basically phrase concepts. Like, for instance, let's look at accuracy in the third column, right? So accuracy or factualness, different authors have things that they roll into accuracy, like has a domain of values in a specified range of valid values, matched to agreed source, agreed with the real world, precision of data value. So the ones where we had the most agreement are those black lines there in the vertical sort of column for accuracy, and those that were referenced by one or two authors, but not everyone, were these domain of values or precision. And I just, mapped this all out. Where there was disagreement, you have these red dashed lines in order to illustrate, where people might argue or maybe some confusion during discussions. So this is a good kind of map for you to keep in hand when you're having discussions with your stakeholders around data quality. When they throw out words like reasonableness, what do they wrap into that? So this is where I came from. So then the conform dimensions, I said, well, wait, there needs to be a dimension. I agree with that. And there need to be, distinct boxes for that. Then there's underlying concepts that disambiguate that, that break that down further, which is what we had before. And I think that we should agree on those things, and that different people in the survey originally said, we need different dimensions of data quality for each industry. Like for utilities, we need a different one from healthcare. And I didn't understand that, because this is from an architectural data modeling perspective. Like, this is generic and you can apply it to data more broadly. You don't need it to be specific to an industry. Where that happens is really in the metrics. So there may be metrics that use data quality specific to healthcare, right? So there may be an instance you're going to use the underlying concept and then apply that specific to healthcare. And your naming of that, or even the way that you calculate that, may be slightly different. And that's an instance in making up the metric, but you should be able to use the underlying concept from the conformed dimensions of data quality in any organization. So that's incredibly helpful and incredibly powerful once you move forward with that. Okay, so let me make a transition here, and probably I just want to take a quickie look at these questions. Yeah, John, I appreciate your comment there. We've seen a lot of confusion of which rules are purely technical versus which rules have a component of definition which needs to be defined by business. And I think that's the great thing about the conformed dimensions is you can have a really good data stewardship discussion around which rules are handled by different people with what processes. I'm actually writing a book on the conformed dimensions. It's been a long time coming. And I have a list. You can sign up for that when that comes out. But in there, I have a section which talks about like some of the roles and responsibilities that we typically see. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer of who does what dimensions of data quality, but typically there are certain things around architecture and data modeling and completeness that are typically handled by IT folks. And then other aspects that towards validity and accuracy that oftentimes need a lot more business contribution. And so we see by de facto of the business, the topical areas, what's being discussed and what's being controlled, that requires different stakeholders. So I think that's an important thing to cover. So here we're going to go into leveraging the AI for improved data quality. And I don't have all the answers. I'm not an LLM expert, but I think there's some very significant tools out there. And I ask for your patience in one way, one aspect as part of this presentation. I get very carried away. And because data quality is my world, a lot of the cool things that I see about the LLMs here are helpful to me as a data quality person, but aren't purely data quality. So I may wrap them into this discussion of, hey, you're going to have better data quality because you have an LLM and you're using it this way, but it isn't technically purely like data quality assessment, profiling, etc. It's more about conducting data governance and activities around the management of data quality. So forgive me, you could, ding me for maybe expanding the scope of this, but that's the context that I'm coming from. So basically, the presentation compares 3 different products. First, we'll go into the Gemini on Google Sheets. And then in my case study here, I used the annual Dimensions of Data Quality survey results. So this is the actual spreadsheet with the results that people answered. Note, I did remove names and email addresses from those before giving that to Google. So some privacy was protected there. And then audit balance and control requirements. This is a scrubbed document of audit balance and control, which is basically completeness monitoring for point-to-point data transfer, like an ETL environment. Scrubbed from a consulting assignment deliverable, and then used for evaluation. So Gemini doesn't provide. Well, anyway, we'll go forward. So then the way I kind of structured it is these cards and a tiled format here between failed, passed, and mixed results. Some of the use cases that I used. So like create a histogram for the count of respondents who used each of the dimensions of data quality. So it couldn't like out of the box figure out, okay, what was the column? What was the question around dimensions of data quality, and then create a chart for that. It couldn't create a bar chart for highlighted cells. Like I thought, okay, maybe I need to tell it exactly where that data is coming from. So I highlighted that and hoped like it would would drill down on that. Create a new tab and table that has the following aggregate measures of each. So being really more specific about what I'm asking for, like something I would give an entry-level analyst if he or she was working for me, and they were going to do some initial profiling to get started, right? And can't do that. Now, cool part, and the parts where I think passed for me was summarize this table, right? So this table appears to be a survey about data quality measurement within organizations. Respondents provided information. It I think very decently gave me context to what the data set is. So if you're, and this is beyond data quality, right? This is just metadata, kind of your aggregate summary. But I think in anything, when you're assuming your organization is approved to use an LLM inside the company on company data, I think this is an extraordinary way for you to make a jump start. And even as a data quality analyst, if you think about a lot of what I'm talking about here today is preparing you as a data quality, data management staff member. How do I respond to business people that are using these AI tools to solve their data quality? Because they're going to use these tools for everything, and they're going to start slapping their data in there, and they're going to come back to you and say, I summarized my data. It says this about the data. They probably won't even check the data themselves before they send you an email and say, well, the AI told me that you don't have this question in the data set. So be ready as a data management professional to reverse engineer and know what the AI tools are doing when you get an email that says your data quality sucks because AI said so, right? So you need to be kind of prepared for that wave if you aren't already getting those sort of responses. And could you guys just drop me a note in the comments right now? Is anybody getting that right now? And if in your thoughts on that, what data quality issues exist with the data in this spreadsheet? That was the next one. Based on the provided data and column descriptions, here's some potential data quality issues that exist. So on the following slides where you see the numbers 1 and 2 and 3, I go into the actual results. And so the PDF you guys get later, you can go into detail and make more observations. Feel free to continue this discussion with me on email if you guys, you're seeing something that I'm not seeing. But anyway, we'll get there. So then then in the mixed area, Gemini offered this, but the results were still in a decimal format. So they said create a formula. So it will, because not everyone knows what kind of prompt to put in. It prompts you. No pun intended. It suggests a prompt, and that was create a formula to find the percentage of respondents who have not started a data quality program. And I don't know how, like randomly, it just picked one of the questions, which was, started a program or not. And then it gave me the formula, which is cool and everything. But honestly, the answer was still a decimal. And like, I got to change that into a percentage. Like, why not give that to me in a percentage? But I mean, it's kind of getting there. So there's all the mixed results. And then I think the part that I was really looking for was cross-system sort of evaluation. So this data was collected from the survey. So I context to data quality is really important. How was the data collected? And in survey design, the data collection method is really important. Like what controls, what HTML, did you use a free-form text box or was it a drop-down? Things like that are really important. So I thought, well, the way that I can tell it what it looked like, what HTML was used, I can just give it the website. So I reopened the survey. The survey had already been closed for the year. So I reopened that, gave it the URL, and said, given this, given the questions in the survey as context, what data quality recommendations do you have? And so we'll see that. I have to say it wasn't so great for Gemini, but some of the others were better. So let me get into that. Okay, so ability to summarize, right? So summarize this table. The answer was in a paragraph format. I reformatted it into these bullet points, which I think made more sense. Different AI tools offer different levels of this. So this is kind of representational data quality. So I hope over time, and I have a million Google friends that work at Google, so I won't call out Gene But I always joke around at home because, my friends that work at Google, if something I don't like about Google, I always say, well, go call him. But it doesn't really work that way because there's so many people that work at Google and like they don't have any control over it anyway. So don't worry, Gene, I'm not going to be coming back to you and telling you that the AI output is not good. And I hope nobody else does that just because you work at Google. I apologize in advance if my work here has drawn you into those discussions. But anyway, the point is I put in the bullet points myself, and then I underlined the actual questions because I know the survey. I know how many questions are in the survey. Like there's 32 logical questions in the survey, and the way that the tool breaks it out is different columns. Like the other field is modeled as a separate physical column. So the tool may not figure out why other, there's a duplicate, there's like a secondary column for other on every single question almost. So I thought it was interesting. Hey, they found 14 kind of logical columns in the thing, but mine actually had 32. So I think these are some of the issues that, your business partners are going to run into. Be very careful if they're starting to make any data quality jumps in expectations if they're only using AI. I'm deep diving on spatial data quality right now, GIS data quality. And one of the big problems is that people used to read a physical map, and then the GIS world, Geographic Information Systems world, was their job was to basically be PDFs for spatial data, moving paper maps into a digital format. And then people started going crazy because it's on a computer. It's somehow more valuable and smarter and has more information than a paper map. Like people would take a paper map and go, I know this isn't going to tell me things that I don't know. It's limited to what I can see. But when you put it in a GIS, then people are like, whoa, I can do spatial analysis and I can figure out this. And then they force the GIS tool to start doing things that the paper map never meant to do. And I think we're going to see a lot of that with AI is that people are going to start asking AI a lot of things that it wasn't designed to do, especially of an LLM. So an LLM is dealing with textual data, and I'm not going into a whole AI course here because I wouldn't be the one to teach it. But from my understanding, LLMs are, they scrape the data from the web and they make some logical sense of that and then can reference you to these things on the web. And they make a judgment on some things based on textual input, not so much on relational data structures. Hence, some of the difficulty of some of these tools in dealing with spreadsheets, as we'll see as I continue to go through this. Okay, any questions here? Michelle Knight, how do we avoid observational bias where we decide how to collect the data impacts how you interpret it and have it influence data quality? A good example of this kind of thing is the survivor bias from research on World War II planes. I don't know survivor bias, but absolutely, I think this is where, the difference between
Can I?
Yeah,
basically what the survivor bias is like, you're looking for accuracy. You see all these planes that have been shot up, right? And people come back and say, well, we need to improve the planes so they don't get shot. So we end up, really accurately looking at different parts of the plane and patching it up and everything. But what we haven't looked at are the planes that have ended up without any survivors. There's a context thing. We're so focused on the one context in the data quality field, we're not looking at the others. I don't know if that makes
sense. And you don't have a lot of data on the planes that never.
Right. So you want to get somebody out of that mindset.
Yeah.
Because there's a data quality problem.
Yeah. And so to me, that's like the creme de la creme is talking about bias. I think there's some entry level stuff with AI where we need to fight some really block and tackling questions first. And that's where I'm staying at here, because I think you get into, political and other sort of biases as well that, aren't being picked up. And that's not the scope of my discussion today. Today is purely like block and tackling data quality. Although representation, which could figure into bias is one of the dimensions of data quality in the conform dimensions. Anyway, I don't have too much time here, so I'm going to move on. I definitely come to my. Here's another reason to come to my class. We can continue some of this discussion. I have, that we have extra time on the second day of my class when we can delve into some of these things. So the prompt here on this one was, what data quality issues exist in the data in the spreadsheet based on the provided data, and the column descriptions. Here are some potential data quality issues, and it started using the dimensions of data quality. It was very interesting that it used incompleteness rather than completeness. And it even included some possible causes. Some of the conclusions, I get a little scared, like when it makes conclusions, does it know this from experience or just from a canned response? So sometimes it reads a website, and the website will have like best practice. Maybe it read my blog or somebody else's blog on, hey, you should have a drop down rather than a free-form text field. So is it kind of aggregating this up because it read about it? I mean, these are the same things that we think about when we interview people, right? We say, they have the right answers, but did they come to the answer because they read it in a book versus they experienced it? And maybe we don't care, depending on like if they're at the analyst level or they're higher managerial level, and they need to understand that from experience, which drives out more nuance and detail to the recommendations. And then sometimes it's just too generic, like how the response interpreted the answers, especially those with open-ended response or those requiring self-assessment. So I think Michelle has a good point. The higher end of things, like it's too generic. This is the difference between SurveyMonkey sort of survey, and then there's like PhDs who spend a lot of time tweaking the questions, right? And data science is really more about how do you ask the right question? What are you really trying to achieve to ask the right question? Because the right question will derive the right answer, which derives a successful and effective decision using the data, as opposed to getting an answer, right? So it's not just let's get an answer as soon as possible. And then validity, it's not really specific to validity. Some of these assumptions and things, some of the advice is just too broad. Identifying more, the Gemini's note at the end, identifying more specific data quality issues would require a deep analysis of the data, including understanding the survey's context, intended use, and business rules. So I think the good thing is that they padded it with some like guardrails. They're saying, hey, use your brain. I think our business stakeholders, some of them aren't going to do that. So let's just be ready in the data management space. We need to be ready to help people, kind of sense check this stuff and go back to, some of their data platforms where we've canned some of the BI results. And in the process of canning it, we've actually governed the dissemination of that data. And using AI, some of those walls of governance may start to get peeled away, and the tool may accidentally remove some of the governance. I'm not going to go into all this detail, but I wanted to provide some value out there to you guys. I highlighted some things that are really, so given the results, here's what it talks about. The survey indicates that many organizations haven't implemented blah, blah, blah. And then the yellow part here, for much of the answer, all this yellow highlighted text is not from the survey data, nor can it be directly supported by the data, although it's technically correct. So if you read this, it's like they web scraped the damn Bach, and so they have some decent good ideas, maybe from blogs and other things, but it's very fluffy. It's kind of like consultants when they give you the deck, they're like, here it is, and it's 150 slides, and it's like all these like pie in the sky recommendations. So I love it as sort of like a way to work with it and massage the ideas and think outside the box, but from a like, and it's become a lot better with the lineage and transparency. There's like there's numbers on some of them where you can drill into what it is. So let me get to Notebook LM, because Notebook LM does that. So and Gene, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna do it anyway. The Notebook LM and then the Gemini, are they the same engine underneath, or do you know if they're? Do you know?
No, I don't know. No, it's the same. It's the same team, but no, I don't know the actual guys. I like you have gotten some pretty amazing results from Notebook LM. For those of you that are out there with Evernote or Obsidian archives with your own notes, do some experimenting with Notebook LM. It's pretty interesting.
I had the best results with Notebook LM. This is my anecdotal experience with it, is taking my PDF of my report, the annual dimensions of data quality. So if you love the topic of the annual dimensions of data quality, put my report in there and say, summarize it on whatever topic you want. And it's awesome. Like, it's better than my executive summary. Like, my executive summary was what I thought was the most important, but I used Notebook LM to go back and forth from a content perspective around what I thought was in the report and what maybe was confusing to the computer. If it's confusing to the computer, it's confusing to me as well. So you can't upload spreadsheets. Like, the spreadsheet tabular world doesn't work for Notebook LM. So boom, it failed that for me, right? Instead, I used like the annual dimensions report, and then I have this audit balance and control document that I scrubbed. And how well will the audit balance control requirement ensure data quality completeness? And then using the conform dimensions of data quality, I wanted to see if it could pull information from my website and then compare it to something else. So here, there's a few things, like it throws out the word accuracy. And because the LLM is built off the internet, it's going to use the word the way we use the word as humans. And we just throw out that word accuracy all the time, but we don't really put a lot of definition around it. Data management people need more definition of that. So it's technically used maybe not in the right ways, but people do that too. So I'm going to give a little discount. But at the end, I think you hit the nail on the head. Is that, however, this actual effectiveness hinges on proper implementation, diligent monitoring, and timely resolution of identified errors. So your CDO, hires the data quality consultant like Dan Myers. Dan writes up a document, and then you implement this thing, and it doesn't work. Data quality in the organization doesn't improve. Well, it depends on how well it's implemented, how well it's monitored, and then how well it's worked. So these are things that everybody in the data management space who has experience, we know this kind of thing. But I thought it was really cool that it told me that, like, as if like it's been there and done that. So I think that was valuable. Can Notebook LM compare the conform dimensions of data quality website dimensions with the document? So then I said, using the conform dimensions, which underlying concepts will this requirements document ensure are correct? Like, optimally, if you have all the underlying concepts in the conform dimensions, your techniques and tools in your company should be measuring all of those. So which ones does it really do? And these are the numbers where I see the 1, 2, 3, 4 on here. You can click through to where in the source it like sort of quoted, basically like providing quotes and citations. So you can drill to that one. And then it sort of did and didn't do a lot of things, right? So it didn't reach out, but then it says that it didn't, right? It says it's worth mentioning information regarding the conform dimension data quality is external to the provided source. You may want to independently verify this information. So it couldn't quite make that connection. And I'll have to say now in ChatGPT, it did do that connection. So again, what were the inputs for ChatGPT? Annual dimensions data quality Excel file, the ABC audit balance control document. I didn't really find anything where it was a flat failure. This data was collected from the survey URL. It was able to do a number of different, I'm going to skip over this because we're running out of time. So here's the file I uploaded. The data was collected from this website. So it was able to draw some context out of things. It started giving me some decent metadata, summarizing the spreadsheet. It was a little weird, and I don't know if this is what they talk about when they talk about hallucinations, but like it said in column 2, it has roles of the organization, industries, classification, and revenue ranges. Like, I didn't ask about revenue at all. Like, the actual question was about employee counts in the organization, and here's the actual question. So it somehow looked at these sort of numerical field that's been binned up into the employee counts, and it thought I was talking about revenues. I don't know how it got there, but you need to be careful of that kind of thing. And this is, I think, to my point before, not all of my observations are data quality, but these are the kind of things you're going to have with data quality. It's going to start telling you your data quality, your validity is wrong because these brackets don't apply to revenue. And I'm going to be like, yeah, it doesn't apply to revenue because you didn't read the column header that was talking about employees rather than revenue. So from a data quality perspective, until we get past some of these block and tackling sort of issues, where it's going to be difficult to handle data quality. The next one here is to clean the data set effectively, do these things. So it offered to clean the data set. And so then I said, yes, I want to do that. Please clean the data set. I wasn't sure what it was going to do. But then it said, well, I'm going to remove the unnecessary columns, standardize field names, handle missing data. But then I got scared because I was like, where's the audit trail in this stuff? I'm going to have business people clicking on buttons that say, fix my data. And the AI is not going to tell me, there's not going to be any metadata. When it comes to my desk as a data quality person, somebody's going to say, I had ChatGPT fix the data set, but the numbers look weird for this month. I just know that's the email they're going to send me, right? And like, how am I going to do root cause analysis as a data quality person? Because I don't have an audit trail of what all it's doing. And then I kind of hit that paywall. And so I said, okay, fine, I'm going to purchase the 4.0 model rather than the ChatGPT 4 model. And then for some weird reason, after I purchased it, I couldn't upload files anymore. So I couldn't continue my discussion. Now I found that I can start a new project and upload a new file and begin this whole new process. But at that point, I have to scope creep for my presentation to you guys. I apologize, but I can't spend too many hours driving into why ChatGPT can or can't do this and that. Now, how well will these audit balance and control requirements ensure that data completeness is preserved? So I uploaded this unstructured document. It's a Word doc. And then it was amazing, right? So then it breaks down source to target. And then one of the things I like about ChatGPT is the readability. The representation is a little better. It sort of knows how to number and use outlines. A lot of the information is in there in that way. And then so it then breaks down the topical areas. And then interesting too, like a Notebook LM, it highlighted the importance of implementation in order to be successful. So I thought that was cool that it took a step back and said, you can take all this great information, but if you don't do it right, it will be a moot point. And I think we're running so low on time, but that's one of my big takeaways as a practitioner. And my advice to you is you can start using AI on some of these data quality things, but my job as a practitioner with experience is not going away soon, because these are the things where we know the nuances, having done it before. We know what sequence that things should be done in, how people work, how people are going to interpret and respond in a change management way to data quality issues. So I would ask you guys that as you're rolling out AI and for data governance or data quality, think about the human aspects and the experiential aspects that maybe are not included in the AI tools. So the last one was using the conform dimensions at this URL. So the question to my mind, the use case was, can it compare something from a website to a document that I uploaded? And the ABC requirements strongly aligned with the CDDQ concepts, especially completeness, accuracy. So it listed out the specific dimensions that hit the nail on the head for that requirements document. So if you're a data manager and your consultant comes in and delivers the document, you do the summary on it, you need to also compare it to what you asked the consultant to do. Maybe in your SOW, you said, go do X. And then I needed to be able to compare what's the output to what was asked of that consultant. It just did that for me. It said, these are the dimensions that are covered in the document. Now, the word integrity, it kind of screws it up a little bit. I disagree, but that's kind of a semantic thing. I think it just saves a lot of time. I jumped to the next phase. I said, can you create a side-by-side mapping of each of the requirements to the dimensions of data quality from my website? And this was super cool because like this would take me, a long time, or I would have to have my consultant who created the document do it for me, and they're going to bill me. So, source to target, row count, and audits. And the really cool thing here is anybody who's in data quality, we know that it's a multi-dimensional product. Many dimensions can apply to one data quality problem. One technique to solve a data quality thing may support the remediation or control of more than one dimension of data quality. So it's really a one-to-many relationship. So I thought it was cool that the requirement for source to target, row, and financial audits had multiple dimensions of data quality. Whether or not I totally agree with its conclusion on which dimensions is, a little bit different, but at least it did that. And then you can click on it to expand it. On the right-hand side, this is the full expansion of the requirements, and then the actual dimensions of data quality. I think it did a decent job. I don't know where in the world it got traceability, because that's not on my website. It's lineage, right? So in the conform dimension, we call it lineage, not traceability. Yeah. Anyway, so my overall takeaway on this one, I know we're kind of running low over on time, but I did, I'm an educator. I got to give a grade to something, have a little fun with it. So the pros and cons, I'm not going to go into all the detail, but basically Gemini, the data set summary was helpful. It can prompt for some basic questions. I would kind of give it a D. I think Gemini will be better for Excel people that are like, create a formula that takes these two columns and subtracts this column and divides by 5. Like, I think that part might be more helpful, and that may have been what the product owners of Gemini were aiming for. It doesn't really fit the data quality use case. Google Notebook LM, again, it's not going to handle the data set, the spreadsheet, but one of the cool things is doing summaries. It can prompt for basic questions and statistics. I would, in the future, I just think LLMs are not the right tool, not the all-inclusive tool for data quality, right? So in data quality, we're going to need spatial AI. Relational database AI for, columns and rows and columns. And then that's going to be kind of dealt with. And then the AI tools are going to have to merge. The LLM is going to have to merge with a more specific relational AI, where I can write out a question in plain English, which would be in the LLM's domain, but then it's going to have to pass off that request to a relational AI tool that's doing the pure data quality crunching in a relational context, and then aggregates that back up and re-adds context, that says, like, you have a completeness error, click on this link to read DQMatters blog on completeness, where, you're bringing pure LLM strength with underlying relational AI. And I'm using the word relational AI because I'm not an AI person. I apologize. So Chat GPT, I thought, and I going in, I'm in the Bay Area, like everyone's, oh, Chat GPT this and that, and drives me nuts. And I don't like brands in the sense that, like, just somebody likes something for the sake that they like it, right? I like proof. I'm a scientist. I like to be able to prove it. But in this scenario, I really like the results that ChatGPT had for what is out there. Now, I know a lot of people are behind the Microsoft ball, and they're using Pilot. Is it Pilot, the Microsoft AI tool? So the fact that I kind of did my thing on to Google, and I spelled Google wrong. Oh, don't tell Gene, but I spelled Google wrong on the slide. But anyway, the point is, I'm willing to redo this on a Microsoft context as well, or collaborate with you guys. I'm not, as a consultant, I don't have Microsoft sort of environment, but I know that most people do. And so if you want to, work on that with me, I'd love to collaborate with you guys. I try to make my class. So this is the last kind of slide here, and I'll tell you a little bit about my class. Try to make my class really like impactful, like have a lot of information in it, but then make it fun as well. And that's really why we've expanded it to 2 days. so that we have more time for hands-on illustrations and working together with your peers. I love the fact that when you come into the meeting, it has, you meet people, you network, you get ideas, not just from Dan Myers, but other people. And the class that I teach really enables participants to practice diagnosing the data quality issues. So you learn the dimensions of data quality in the conformed dimensions context, even if you have a standard set different than that. And I'd be willing to do, if you want to customize it for your on-site training classes, I'd be able to take and compare the conformed dimensions to what you have and then teach in terms of language that you use. But most companies aren't mature enough to even be that level. So we just use the conformed dimensions. I explain those for detection, control, and improvement, so that there's like 13 different techniques that I teach that are broader than any tool is going to do out of the box right now. Most tools will do a lot of these, but I focus it on categories, and I have a big grid that I give you in the class that helps you compare your data quality problem as a dimensions of data quality and it's a matrix, and you can diagnose, okay, if I have validity issue, what techniques are applicable, and then drill down to that underlying concept. This technique is the best technique to use for that. And it helps people start to think about, how do I control this? What are my cost benefit analysis, right? So when I go to my manager and I say, I want to implement this control, here's how much time it's going to take in programming hours in order to do it, but it's going to be reusable across all these data quality problems that we have. And I think that really provides you a sound way to move forward.